Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. My name is Jeroen, I do DevRel at Posit, and we're joined here today by Vincent Warmerdam. Vincent,
Hiya. Hi.
welcome.
Yeah, nice to be here. It's like I've always been an RStudio fan back in the day, so it's nice to sort of see the evolution and we're calling it Posit now. But yeah, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, so Vincent, you're an engineer at Marimo, and that's actually what we're going to talk about today, about Marimo and also this cool plugin that
Yeah,
Marimo has created, right?
we tend to ship a lot. Yeah, we ship a lot of things, and recently we shipped a thing for Quarto as well. Believe it or not, it was actually, if you look on YouTube, it was the #1 feature for months. Like people wanted to have Marimo support inside of Quarto, so we were too busy hiring to be able to work on it. We then got the guy hired that did the work for it, and it's out now. People can go ahead and start playing with it. It does help if you can appreciate what Marimo does under the hood, and that's also kind of the point of today. We're going to talk a
Mm-hmm.
bit about Marimo and then also use that as a staging point for moving on to the plugin. But yeah, we're super, like, the first feedback we've gotten so far has been extremely positive, so we're definitely keen to talk more about that.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So why don't we dive straight into it? I have my terminal. So um, I'm typing, and
Yep.
it's up to you. We can go anywhere we want, and so I have my terminal open right now, but that's not where we need to start. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Marimo?
Yeah, so what I think will be the easiest, you've got UV installed, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So what one thing you could do is you could start a virtual environment here and immediately call and like we can install Marimo. What you can also do is just type UVX and then Marimo. That should also work. And then do dash dash help at the end.
Yeah,
The
like this.
benefit of the yeah, so that should work.
All
Right.
right.
So this allows you to run Marimo without a virtual environment because you can just immediately call Marimo. And you can also see that there's like a bunch of commands there. Yep,
Right.
at the bottom. So you can convert Jupyter notebooks or Markdown files into the format that we like to use over on Marimo. There's config, there's all sorts of things. But there are two verbs that are going to be important for us right now. One of them is the edit command, and one of them is the run command. The idea here is that you can run a notebook in edit mode, which means that you can edit it kind of similar to what you would do with a Jupyter notebook. But once you're done editing, you can also deploy it as a web app. In that case, you want to run it in run mode. Well, run mode, I think we call it app mode internally, actually. But
Mm-hmm.
those are the two modes that I think would be fun to maybe explore first. And while we're at it, what we're also going to do is we're going to build a Python notebook first where everything is nicely sandboxed. So we're going to go with UVX Marimo edit.
All right. And so I heard the word notebook in there, right? So
Yep.
Marimo is all about notebooks,
Marimo is a Python notebook. That's
right?
the best way to describe it. And Python is the first class citizen. We do also support SQL and Markdown. We'll get to that in a bit. But it's definitely a Python notebook. So what
Cool.
you can do is you can type edit indeed. Then you have to do dash dash sandbox. I'm gonna come back to that why that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can give a name to the file we want to store the notebook in. Everything in Marimo is stored in a Python file. So you could just type notebook.py. We don't do the thing that Jupyter does with the JSON. We do everything in a Python file, basically. So just notebook.py will be good here.
All right.
So a bunch of stuff is installing, and we see the Marimo notebook has spun up, and it's opened the browser for us.
And it was
And
really
this,
fast. I just want to say that thanks to
yes,
UV and everything is installed very fast.
it's UV is definitely doing the heavy lifting on the speed there. That is definitely true. But yeah,
Awesome.
this is a notebook, and it's in a lot of ways similar to Jupyter because we've got cells and stuff, but it's also very different in a lot of ways too. So
Mm-hmm.
what you'll notice is there's a lot of buttons. There's like a side panel on the left. But I think the easiest way for me to explain just what makes Marimo different is to just immediately start typing in a cell.
All right.
We'll get to all the fancy buttons in a bit, but let's also maybe zoom in a bit because people might be seeing this on a mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, something like that feels appropriate. What you can do now is you can hit tab, and that first line will autocomplete. This will load all the Marimo utilities. And if you now hit like Shift Enter, you're going to run that cell. A new cell below should appear. And you can also move the mouse cursor in there. And just as a base example, let's just type A is equal to 1. Yep. And then the new cell below that. So you can run it. And then B is equal to 2. That's also like, we're just going to do basic Python variables here, right? Nothing overly scary. And then let's do one more cell below that, and we can do A plus B.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then we
looking
can see
for
what the
the
output is.
keyboard shortcut to run the cell and open a new cell immediately after that.
Isn't that like, yeah, so I have a fancy keyboard where all the keyboard shortcuts are super custom. But if you are,
You have like a
one thing
dozen keyboards.
yeah, there's a collection at this point. What you can also do now is just, can you hit Command K? So that'll bring up the command palette. And if you type shortcut in here, then you're going to be able to see all the keyboard shortcuts that we've got. If you hit enter now, you are going to see all the shortcuts. So we can look in here. But most of all, there's also edit buttons. Yeah, so okay, shift enter, there you go. But you can also change all of these. So if you wanted to make a change here, that's also something you could do.
Yeah.
So if you do shift enter now, yeah, there you go. I think that's the same in Jupyter. But now you can type A plus B. Yep, and nothing scary is happening here. But there are like a few notable differences with Jupyter, right? So one thing that's different is that we render on top instead of below.
Yes.
So notice how the 3 is rendering on top instead of below. Like, that's a setting you could change, but there's a reason why we do this. So just for fun, if you hover your mouse over the cell that has A is equal to 1, and if you now look at the right-hand side of the cell, you're going to see 0 milliseconds, and you're going to see those 6 dots.
Yes.
Can you grab that and scroll it down?
Just down here?
And you can, and you can do the same thing with B is equal to 2, and you can do the same thing with the import statement. Like in Marimo, the order of the cells doesn't necessarily matter. Marimo will figure out in what order the cells have to run in order for them to actually go ahead and run. So what you could do now is just refresh the notebook. So hit Command R from the top of my mind. It's like the browser refresh window thing. Yep, and then you can hit restart on the right-hand side of that on the blue cell. There's a restart icon on the right-hand. Yeah, that one. That's going to restart the entire notebook. Restart. And you're going to notice this thing just still runs without you having to do anything, and without having to do like shift enter through all the cells. And again, that's because Marimo can figure out in what order things have to run.
Yeah, that's very nice. I mean, that's something that I believe a lot of notebook users run into, is that at a certain point, what you have on the screen is not really what is going on under the hood, right?
So what's in memory or what's on screen tends to be like, you don't have that guarantee in Jupyter. But what we can do now, just for shits and giggles, could you just remove that line that says A is equal to 1? Just have a blank cell there. Yep. Now hit enter, like run that cell. Oop. It's immediately in your face telling you like, oh, there's a variable missing. Yes. In Jupyter, this would have been different, right? Because even if you remove that statement, A is equal to 1, A is equal to 1 is still in memory. And if you remove the cell, I mean, someone else would not be able to run the notebook, but we can kind of be in your face about it. Absolutely. And the reason why this works is because Marimo under the hood is actually doing a forward pass over all the code. It is looking at all the different cells. And it's, in this case, saying, oh, there's a cell A that contains A plus B. We need to look for a cell that defines A. And we're looking for a cell that defines B. And we're able to sort of build a DAG of operations in a way. So if you could go back and like add A is equal to 1 to that cell again.
Yeah, so this pop-up.
There's a cell below. That's the one. That's the one with the second cell.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That's the one where you had, yeah.
So this is an entirely new pop-up, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's popping up in the cell where we detect that A is missing.
Yeah, so but if I now say A is 1 again and run it, the error disappears.
It goes away. And now we can do something interesting. Like if you go to the side panel on the left, and then 1, 2, 3, fourth icon from the top, the one with the graph.
Explore
so that says
dependencies.
Yeah, you could click that, and then click vertical tree. So then you can actually see the DAG. Like this is something that people always find kind of interesting. So you can actually see what cells depend on each other. So you can actually see that Marimo has figured out, oh, there's a cell 0 that has A plus B in it, and it depends on these 2 other cells. And in this case, it's like crazy simple. If you have a more complex notebook, you can actually see really complex DAGs appear over here.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But like to emphasize, this is actually what's happening under the hood. So in like one way of describing what's happening here is Marimo is like almost a compiler. It looks at all the cells, and then and depending on what it sees in the cells, that determines the order of in which operations actually happen. So there's like a it's not the same as compilation, obviously, but it's like almost a compilation step. Like there's a thing that we do before we actually run anything.
Yeah, yeah, very refreshing. So I think, I mean, I have to think of the term reactive here.
Yep. Yep.
What would happen now if we were to change the value of either A or B?
So let's just show it. So so pick whatever value 42
I'm
or
thinking
7.
7.
Okay, good.
Why do it 42? Of course,
Right.
or 41. So that the answer now in the first cell is 42.
Yes, and if you look back at the DAG that we've got, right, Marimo can actually do something kind of clever here because we noticed, B is equal to 41 now. Oh, so then there's a child that needs to update, but I don't have to update the cell that has A is equal to 1. So it can be very picky about what parts of the DAG have to actually update. So, there's one cell changed over here. Okay, let's look at all the children in the graph, and those need an update. And that's like pretty convenient. Also from like I don't want to rerun code that doesn't have to be run. Like I don't want to read the whole CSV file again. Like that kind of stuff is also nicely captured by having it in a DAG form, so to say.
Yes. Wow. And
and like a lot of stuff in Marimo might feel a bit strange if you're used to Jupyter, but as long as you understand this phenomenon, like, it's reactive and this is this thing that's happening under the hood, a lot of things do fall into place. And there's a few things we could do at this point. Like we could explore the UIs, but one thing I kind of want to do now is also just show you a consequence of this, because if you're a Python user, there is this one aspect of having a reactive framework like this that is a constraint. So could you write down A is equal to A plus 1, for example?
plus 1.
Yeah. So what would you expect to happen when you run this?
By the way you're introducing it, it sounds like this, yields an error.
Yeah, so feel free to run it. It definitely does an error. And the DAG is actually kind of giving you a hint. So if you look at the DAG visualization, you can kind of see that you kind of have to make an assumption that A equals A plus 1, but that has to happen before A plus B.
Yeah.
But we totally have to make an assumption in order for that to work. And we don't like assumptions. We want you to be quite explicit. So, the DAG does show it in this particular case, but there's a mechanism inside of Marimo that says, okay, we don't want you to do this, because the moment that we have a lot of this mutable state, then it's very hard for us to understand in what order things have to actually run. Yeah. You lose that benefit of, the order of the cells doesn't matter anymore. And we value that more than being able to override globals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there would also be, it would redirect to itself, right? You would get into an infinite loop otherwise.
You could also do some gnarly things with that, actually, if you're not careful. And like, if you know your way around Python, there are ways around this, but none of those would be things I would recommend. To be explicit, like if you know what you're doing, you can still muff around. But in a lot of data analysis, there's a reason why in place is true is sort of being phased out in pandas, right? Like there's a reason why all these in place operations, they kind of turn out to be a bad idea for data pipelines. If you're used to writing Python scripts, though, there is this one thing you can do. So if you copy that line, A is equal to A plus 1, if you copy that one line, and then feel free to just remove the cell.
Yeah.
What
I
you
guess
can
that
do
within
is
the same cell, you can definitely do
exactly
this. Right.
Exactly.
That's
So what we care about is that a variable is defined and created in one cell and only in one cell, and you are totally allowed to do that. That's totally fine by us. What you're also able to do is, if you want to make variables that you only use, like you have a for loop, let's say like for I in range 10 or something like that, then technically I would be declared in that for loop.
That's true.
So what you can do for moments like that is you can add a prefix. So you could do something like for underscore I in range. Yep.
This is like
range 2 or something. And then like print, I guess, or whatever. Yep. So technically underscore I is now a variable, and like theoretically you could say, okay, you can't use it anymore. But because you add an underscore in front of it, there's a convention inside of Marimo that we know, like, okay, that variable should only, for all intents and purposes, only exists in that one cell. And if it's redefined elsewhere, it'll always be constrained within that one cell. That's the assumption that we make.
Ah, good. Yeah, I mean, this is related to the convention that variables that start with an underscore are considered private, right?
Yeah, well, I think double underscore is like properly private. Single underscore is hidden, I think, in the Python convention. So like if you have on an object, right, you've got a method that starts with an underscore, tab completion won't work, but you are still able to call it. If you do double underscore, then there's an extra safety mechanism that prevents you from calling it. It's not the same as like private stuff in Java or something like that. But yeah,
we don't.
But anyway, like as far as Marimo is concerned, like we do have things like that do allow you to play around a little bit with mutables. We just really don't like them. Like if you want to have mutable state, that's something you can declare explicitly. But for data analysis, you should probably not go there.
Yeah. Hey, and so these are all code cells. Can we also have other kinds of cells in Marimo?
Totally. So if you let's make a new cell. So let's close that pane on the left-hand side, by the way. Like we don't really need it at this point. And then in the new cell, you see at the bottom, by the way, you can see that we've got Python, Markdown, or SQL.
Right.
We support let's make a Markdown cell for now because we don't have a data set just yet. But like you can start typing in Markdown there. So headers and yeah, this is a header. And you can also add code cells there, so like stuff with like Python, and you should see auto-completion stuff happen there as well.
But it wouldn't execute this.
Oh, this is just static.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not being executed.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Code syntax highlighting. Nice.
Yep.
Here I see
like all
again,
the stuff that you're used to from Markdown, basically.
Yeah. What was the reason again why the output is being rendered above the code?
Right. So to be explicit, you can change that, right? So if you're really more comfortable with it showing below, then that's also totally fine. I think where it came from is partially the convention that Observable does it the other way around. So Observable is this JavaScript notebook. The thing that is kind of nice is if you're dealing with stuff that's highly visual, then the code actually matters less than the cell output. So for example, I want to show a slider. Well, the slider is like the important bit. But the way like it becomes a little bit more clear if you were now to sort of press Command H. That's a shortcut for hiding the code. In the case of Markdown, it's really clear that the code doesn't matter. I just want to see the Markdown itself.
Absolutely.
And you have a similar thing. We haven't shown that yet, but Marimo also comes with a bunch of user interface elements. If you render those, then it also kind of becomes clear that, I'm declaring a UI element over here. Well, then the UI element matters, not the code. So the UI element should go first.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, can we have a look at those UI?
Yeah. Let's. So that's also why at the top we imported that Marimo library, by the way. So the MO module, that also contains all the UI elements. One thing that's also just good to mention, it is actually kind of normal in a Marimo notebook to move all of those library imports to the bottom. Because
all right, then let's do that.
Yeah. So and again, it's like people might have different conventions, but like it's not the most like the import is usually not the important part of the analysis, so to say. So why start with that? You can also just move it down, especially because we understand the order of the cells in execution.
True.
You can. The order of cells can actually be a bit more skewed towards presentation as opposed to code execution.
Yeah.
But having said that, what we can do now is we can add another cell, add one anywhere.
All right. Let's do it here.
Yep. And then if you go to Marimo's module mo.ui, we get to the user interface module. And a slider, I think, is the easiest example to go for. So let's just go with slider.
I'm pressing tab, but I'm not seeing any code.
You have to, the auto-completion is a thing that needs to be configured because it requires an extra dependency. If you go to the cog on the upper right-hand corner, yes, and then there's user settings, the cog, so at the bottom, there's that one. So if you scroll now down on the right pane, I think you have to, the language server setting, yes. So that one is installed.
Could it be because I'm using Vim key bindings?
That might be.
Let's disable those for now because.
Yeah, let's and now if you type
No.
S. What might be causing this? I mean, so one thing we can do actually, could you go to?
Oh, would it be in a? Would you have? Do you need to import this submodule separately? Because I am getting tab
No.
completion at this
Yeah,
point.
it's not picking up the Marimo. So all the stuff you see here is basic Python stuff. So this is nothing related to Marimo.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
can we just double check that we ran that cell? So just hit play on that. No, it's imported. Yeah, so that shouldn't be it. One thing we can do just for good measure. So if you go to the left-hand side panel, you'll see that there's this icon of a. Oh, it does work now.
Now it does work, but is that because I just pressed play or because I'm in a cell below the import statement?
It's easy to try. Let's try a cell that's above the import statement.
All
That
right.
shouldn't matter. I mean, oh really? Huh. Okay, that's a bug. I'm gonna file a bug after. I've never seen that before.
Well, that's the way it goes. That's
Oh,
it's all part of it.
okay.
No worries.
Okay. Well, let's
We
do the
can-
autocompletion for now though, because the autocompletion is definitely nice. But okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move this to the top. No worries. I mean, this is
This is why we do it somewhat live, right? Like to figure out stuff like this.
exactly. I'm happy. This is also a way to contribute back to Marimo. Shouldn't be too difficult to fix. All right, so we have mo.ui
Yeah, slider.
slider, a whole bunch of options here.
Oh, there's a ton. But let's go for a basic slider now. Like 1, 10, 1 is a good input. So the slider starts at 1, it ends at 10, and there's steps of 1. Yep.
Yeah.
If you were to run this now, you should already see a slider appear, and you can already move it around.
Yes.
So this generates a slider. However, that slider has some state, and we'd like to store that state into something. So let's maybe come up with a variable name for it.
X.
X, sure, why not? If you were to run the cell now, the slider is going to disappear, by the way. And that's because we're not returning the slider itself. So we have to like end with X at the bottom. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Now when you hit play. Okay, so we have a variable. That's all well and good. And one thing we could now do is you could go to that. So that would be a place to put it. And you could do something like plus X dot value.
Right. You have to be. You cannot just do a plus x.
Well, because you cannot add an integer to a slider object, just like you cannot add 1 to a data frame object in Python.
Yeah, makes sense.
But if the value property of that slider, that I do think is an integer in this case. And now if you move the slider around, again, because everything is reactive, we detect, oh, this one cell has updated, therefore all the children have to update,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Super smooth.
And the thing that is really interesting here is this is just a slider, right? But we can really start dreaming a little bit about different widgets and different user interface elements that we can add.
Mm-hmm.
There is a standard called AnyWidget, and that deserves a podcast on its own, that whole library.
Yeah.
But there is now a standard between notebook environments when it comes to making widgets. So if you follow the AnyWidget spec, it'll work in Marimo, it'll work in Jupyter, it'll work in Colab, it'll work in VS Code. There is now a standard way to write a widget once, and it should work in all the notebook environments.
That's nice.
So one thing I think will be fun to do here, because I also want to start talking about data frames at some point, is let's actually show what it's like to have a widget that can live update a whole data frame and just sort of see how that works. Because then we can go a step further than just a slider. So let's just start a new. One thing so let's just start a new cell. We can just import there. That's fine. So there's a library called draw data. So from draw data, I would do in this case. Import, and there's this widget called the ScatterWidget. Scatter with a capital S and widget with a capital W. Yep. And before running this, what do you think should happen when you run this?
I'm guessing again that it's gonna error because we haven't installed raw data into our virtual environment.
You're warm, but actually no, that's not what's going to happen. Hit play.
All right, let's do it.
So it's indeed throwing an error, but Marimo is picking up that, the reason is because there's this library that's missing. So in this case, Marimo can say like, hey, would you like to install this? And it brings you a pop-up.
Oh wow!
And you can also decide what version.
And it auto detects that Or in UV?
We are in UV. Yes, please keep it there. And you could now go ahead and install. So, okay, this is quite nice, right? But before moving on, could you go back to the terminal? Because I want to have a look at the Python file.
Sure. Yeah.
So feel free to, yeah, so just, yeah, there's a notebook in there. Let's have a look. Notice at the top there,
Oh, yeah.
how it says it's a Python script. It has a Python version attached, but there are also dependencies. This is a thing that's made popular by UV, but it's a Python PEP that I think is general. I think pip could also deal with it. But you're able to
Yeah.
just declare the dependencies of a Python file in the Python file itself. And that also means, as a side effect, Marimo notebooks are really reproducible.
This is super nice. This is PEP
Yeah.
723. And
Oh, you
I've been
memorized
using
it.
because I recently gave a tutorial on creating command line tools that are
Oh, yeah.
also self-contained, right?
Yeah, it's amazing for that use case too.
Yeah.
We can also, if we want to, create a command line app from Marimo in a bit, by the way. We're going to
Ooh,
maybe
yeah.
do that as a demo.
I'm
But
getting goosebumps right now.
yeah, it's a fun trick. But anyway, like the main thing that's important to understand here is, okay, yes, it is a Python file that comes with a benefit that if UV does something clever for Python, it automatically translates to Marimo.
Mhm.
Another thing that's also just good to just briefly show is if you scroll down, you'll see that the cells that we defined are actually Python functions under the
Yeah.
hood.
Yeah.
And oh, there's that markdown cell that we've made. That's actually still a Python cell. It's just that we've wrapped Marimo's markdown utility around it. And what you can also spot if you go to the top, you can actually see that the first cell, it imports Marimo, and notice how it returns it.
Yes.
Then if you go to the cell below, you'll notice that that cell actually takes Marimo as input and it emits X.
Oh. Is that
You can
because
kind of
we're using the Marimo
yes.
library here?
So yeah, so this is the so what you're seeing at work here is kind of that mechanism that detects what are the inputs of this cell and what are the outputs that children use, that later children will use.
So it's also reactive in the sense on the modules that you use. How is
How would
that?
you could you rephrase that?
Well, so a common issue that I run into when using Jupyter Notebook is when I'm working on a notebook and a module that I'm creating myself or some external script that is being imported into the notebook. And when I update the module,
yeah.
is that what's
Yeah, well, that it sort of. So what you're seeing here is what you're seeing here in scope is a little bit more how does Marimo deal with it internally, but a very similar mechanism. If we now go back to the notebook, by the way. So if you look at the bottom bar, the footer, you're going to notice that there's a couple of buttons on the left-hand side. So are you going to, yeah, so we've an errors pane, we've got a terminal as well. But then there's the on startup, then on cell change, and then on module change.
Oh.
So, yes. So what you can determine here, like, okay, when the notebook starts, do I auto run? Yes, no, or do I want to do it in a lazy way? The lazy way is there such that if you have this one cell that is importing like gigabytes of data, you don't want that to automatically rerun every single time. So we offer a setting that says, okay, auto run or don't run at all, or do it in a lazy way. Lazy means manual control, kind of Jupyter style, but you'll notice that you're able to do that on cell changes, but also on module changes. So the pattern that you've described, you have a separate Python file that let's say that you're importing that. We can actually watch for changes in that file.
Oh, wow.
That is really nice. Like I use that pattern all over the place. I will say you can actually go a step further because what you can also do from a Marimo notebook, again, because it's a Python file, you can also declare functions that then other Python files import. That is also something you can do. So I've got a couple of these web apps that are doing something super machine learning specific. There's like this one part of the app that is really doing, the app is called like remember.cards. It is for like making flashcards. And there's like there's a mechanism on like, okay, you just practiced this card, you got it right. And how many days do I have to sort of bring back the card for you to practice it again? Like the rest of the app is like a normal web app, but there's just one function that I need that does a lot of machine learning. That I've defined in a Marimo notebook. And because it's a Python file, I can just add it to the web app natively, and I can import it when I need it. But I can still debug it with charts around if I need that too. Like that's also like a very interesting secret use case for Marimo.
Wow.
Because it's a Python file, you can just have it be part of your normal Python whatever.
Yeah. I want to go back to the Python file
Yeah, sure.
just a moment.
Yeah.
I was curious, how is the markdown cell? That's okay. Yeah. So that's also a Python function, and it returns a markdown
Yeah, and
thingy.
you'll notice that the decorator, it says hide code equals true. Like,
Yeah.
because the code was hidden, we specified that.
Yeah.
What you could do though is you could kind of just copy that. It says mo.md. So there's a markdown function on the Marimo submodule, and you can also call that from inside of Marimo
Yeah.
in a Python cell, and it will render the same thing. So technically, the markdown cell is more a little bit of UI sugar. Under the hood, it's still a Python
Exactly.
cell.
And
Yeah.
this returns, I guess, a markdown object that has a display method or something, a wrapper.
Yeah, so the
Sort of.
we kind of reuse the Jupyter convention. So a lot of objects that have underscore wrapper underscore HTML underscore, like that's a function that that Jupyter really likes to use. However, there are these moments when maybe you want to be Marimo specific. So there's also the underscore display method that you can implement as well.
Yeah.
As far as Marimo is concerned, if the display thing is implemented, we will go ahead and use that because that's a signal that someone took the effort of doing something very Marimo specific. And because what you could do is you could return Marimo objects that we know how to render, right? So that's the thing that you could do. However, we will also pick up on the Jupyter standard. If there's a library that implemented pretty visualization things for Jupyter, then that's a very easy way for us to also make sure it works in Marimo.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. I mean, this one thing that, of course, is a downside of Jupyter notebooks is that whenever you change something and you commit it, you get these huge diffs because it's all JSON under the hood.
There are, like, I do want to be, like, in fairness to Jupyter, right? I mean, there are tools to help you with that situation.
Sure,
And a lot of those tools come with some pretty good ideas. Like, okay, let's remove the outputs. And there are these, like, pre-commit hooks that you could use. And you know, those are not bad ideas. They're actually quite great.
Yeah.
However, the one thing that you shouldn't forget is that Jupyter was designed not just to do Python. So Jupyter, like Julia, Python, and R, that was kind of the design inception thing.
Yep.
And with that, you also had to make some choices. And like a really convenient thing for us is that we were able to say, no, like Python's going to be the primary citizen. And sure, we'll do SQL and we'll do Markdown, but it's going to be Python. And that allows us to just do everything from Python files, which Jupyter couldn't ever really do because that's not what it was designed to do.
That's a very that's a fair statement. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I think there's like an extra thing I want to show now though, because just to sort of expand the mind. So we were so if we could go back to the Marimo notebook, I think there's like two things I want to show because we were working on the ScatterWidget, and that's kind of cool. But I think the notebook is kind of getting a little bit crowded. So let's do a party trick. Could you go to the hamburger icon on the upper right hand side? Yeah, sorry, the cog. I mean the cog that's next to it. Yeah. So there's a display part of the menu there.
Yeah.
Could you click it, and could you go to columns instead? So a thing that we can do, because again, the order of you accidentally hit.
That's the I thought that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no worries. Could you zoom out a bit now? I guess in the browser. Yes. So you notice there's a plus icon there now, right? So you can add a column.
Ooh.
So you can do left-right swiping. And like this is also a thing that it takes a while to get used to, but your notebook can actually be two-dimensional. So something I really like to do in teaching is I have like one column that has all the imports and setting stuff up. Then there's a column with like boilerplate. Then there's a column with helper functions. And then there's this other column where all the action is, like all the widgets and like the final output. And it's up to you to decide where you want to move that left or right. But you can start thinking about a notebook more in a two-dimensional fashion, if that makes sense. So in this case, we just imported the scatter widget. Let's now make a column that's all about doing something with the scatter widget. So what you can do now is you can load the scatter widget.
Just to clarify, it's still the same notebook.
Yep.
Right. It's not like I have two notebooks open next to each other. All right.
Nope. Same notebook, and the same mechanism. We again holistically look at all the different cells. One thing you can do if you zoom out one more time again.
All right.
There's you have to hover over the right spots, but like if you so between this is also a bug ticket I'm gonna fix because it's unclear where to grab it. If you move the cursor straight to the left now, just inch. Oh no, you're being too fast.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
move
right.
the cursor. Yeah, no. Move it very slowly to the left, and at some point you're gonna
Oh, yeah.
yes.
I see.
Yeah, you can make the width smaller or bigger, and I think in this case, yes, it might make sense to have a smaller one because then more fits on a
And
single screen. And you have it on the right side as well.
yeah, so you're
Like
yeah, where you're grabbing that, you're modifying
you have to
what's
know
on the
where it is in
right.
order to yeah. So the downside here is so you have to know where it is in order to grab it. That's still a UI thing. Okay, we'll make a note of
All
that.
right, we'll fix that.
Yeah. But anyway, what we can do now is like use the scatter widget in that cell on the right. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me what to type.
Scatter widget. So SC and then tab completion should take over. Yeah, and we can run this now.
Oh,
And lo
wow.
and behold, now we might need to make it wider actually for this thing to properly fit. But this is the widget that we want.
All right.
So the idea behind the widget is you can draw around. Yeah, okay, this is good enough. So you can draw around, you can draw data points. And the idea here is that these data points can actually then be turned into a data frame. So you've got that famous scikit-learn image of all the different classifiers.
Mm-hmm.
The thinking with this widget was, oh, you might want to be able to draw that widget yourself. And this is a way to do it. However, this is now an any widget, and we would like to do something such that any widget can really deal with it in a nice way. So what you would do is you would go to the code at this point where we declare scatter widget, and we're going to actually assign this scatter widget
Down
into
here,
a variable.
yes. Yep.
Yeah. So we got to assign it to a variable. That's like the first thing we got to do. Yep. And then also show the variable at the bottom because otherwise it won't render.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's step one. Step two is we got to wrap that scatter widget with a Marimo function. So mo.ui.anyWidget, I think. Yep. Let's move scatter widget in there. And visually, it will all look the same. But now when you run this, what you can do,
yeah,
you should be able to access the value. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, run that. And then you can see there's a couple of items
empty
here.
It's empty because
it's empty.
I ran this, and now I should put some data in here.
Yes. So you can actually see that data attribute grows a bit bigger. One thing you can also do is there's a property on that scatter widget, data. Yeah, so if you, sw.data underscore as polars. Yep. And now it's a property, not a method.
All right.
But first we have to install polars.
It complains about that polars is missing.
Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, and you can hit install and it's going to do the thing that it needs to do. It should be installed if you rerun it. Yep. Okay. Like a nice thing about this is we have a data frame widget as well that people sometimes miss out on. So a data frame that we see, which could also be a table from a SQL database. It could be polars. It could be pandas. We use narwhals under the hood.
Nice.
But the thing that we really like is giving you something that's a bit more interactive than just like a static HTML table element. So there's pagination. You can move left and right. Maybe it's good to add another column because our faces are kind of in front of the buttons now.
Yeah, I guess I can also drag this to the left.
Oh, yeah, that also works. That also works. There's one feature I kind of really want to brag about that was added recently.
Go
if
for
you
it.
Scroll down. So you'll notice that there's buttons on that widget. So you can paginate, you can go left and right, you can set the size. You'll also notice there's a download button there. So if this widget was used in a web app and this was for a business user, the business user can just copy this to clipboard to get it into Excel, for example, if that's something they're interested in, or they can download it and open it up in whatever thing that they like to use. But if you now scroll to the right on the same height, you're going to see a magnifying glass.
Let me see if I'm going to scroll to the right.
Oh, so to the left. Sorry, to the left.
Oh, over here. Yes, to the left. Yeah.
This brings up a search pane. So now if you were to type in a number, 282, for example.
Oh, there it is. It's up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which number?
I think 282. Actually, I'm not sure if it does numbers, but yeah. So any row that has the number 282 appear anywhere, we are now filtering live. That's basically what's happening here.
Nice.
So that's definitely kind of a nice thing. What you can also do is just remove the filter. You can also select the columns if you want to do filtering, by the way. That's also something that you can do. So you can see the types, for example, but you can like do all sorts of sorting and copy the names and the stuff you would like to have around. That's definitely there. One of the coolest features that's almost kind of hidden is if you go to the right of the magnifying glass.
Right here. Yep.
So that's the row view. That's that one you want. If when you click
Toggle
it,
column
yes. So this
Explorer.
shows summaries of columns. So if you were interested in, I don't know, checking the distribution of X, you can click it. Oh, we need Altair in order to render the charts. So you can
We're
hit
just gonna
install Altair,
just click
and then you get
install
your
and it
summary.
works.
Yep.
Oh wow.
It's a nice feeling, right?
And now if I were to
Yep. If you were, I think if you were to draw now, it should update.
or am I filtering on
Oh, actually, yeah. So I think so. The moment you click, that's when I think the column viewer does assume that it's immutable. Actually,
well, it does. What I do see changing here is the number of rows.
yeah, but the chart doesn't update. If you were to close that X thing and then open it up again,
Yeah,
then
this
it
is
does
different.
update. But it's the yeah.
All right. That's
I'm gonna make a note of that one too.
good. This is a
We
very
have to be a
useful
little
video.
bit Yeah, I mean, so there's a concern here because it might be a very large data set, right? So this data frame is of course very small, but we also deal with data sets that have like 50 million rows at some point. In which case, by the way, that chart will detect that it needs Vega Fusion instead of Altair.
Oh,
Like that's also
nice.
something we do pick up.
Yeah,
But
because
I can't imagine like if you have every time we add like a row to that data frame, all the charts got to update. Like that's at some point also like a burden on the compute.
exactly
So
Vega Fusion would work, right? Because Altair by default handles up to what 5,000 rows.
I mean, you can increase it to more. It's
You
just
can
they
increase
do
it,
throw a warning. They throw a
but
warning. Yeah.
it will be it needs a lot of RAM for that as well. And but I guess you could also do the aggregation using
Yeah,
polars
that's what we do
or
here.
okay.
Yeah. So if and also like if you have a time series, for example, we also don't show every millisecond. We do bucket it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. This is super nice. So
Yeah, I like to think so. It's especially nice also because I just want to have what are all the columns, and there's a nice overview here. We have some visual cues that tell you what kind of column it is, right?
yeah.
So we try to make a notebook that's kind of like rich and interactive to work with. Another thing I want to mention about this data frame that I think is also good to show is if you go to the left-hand panel one more time, like all the buttons, you're going to see this database icon. Yep, that
Explore
one.
data sources. Yeah.
Yes. Let's now assign that data frame to a variable. So we can do something df equals data as polars. Ooh, now the data frame is a special citizen.
It's a
So
data
we've
source.
always
Yeah.
Yes, it's a data source. So it's we already keep track of all the functions and variables that you've got. So right above the database icon on the left sidebar, you're going to see this thing with F. Those are all the variables that are around. Those are all the objects. Kind of like I think RStudio always had that. MATLAB always had that. So like that pane is definitely there.
Nice.
But a data source is special because what you can do is you can go there, and one thing you could do is you could hit the plus icon. So if you hover over the data frame itself and and then hit plus, you can add the table to the notebook. And so like you can immediately get like a view started. And in the case of the data frame that we made ourselves is not that relevant, and that is the plus icon you just hit. You can also add a data source as in, I've got a database with lots of tables, or I've got Apache Iceberg or something like that. So if you now go back to the panel and you hit the plus icon on top, then you can add a connection to whatever thing where your data is. Redshift got added this week, by the way, so we tend to add a lot of these things now. So one thing you could do, for example, just for fun, let's add SQLite. If you go to the top, I think we have a SQLite thing. Yeah, let's just add a random database path. I think SQLite.db.
Well,
if it doesn't exist, it will just make an empty file, I think. So that's usually why it's a nice easy demo.
Yeah. Okay. So
db. Testdb.sqlite, I think, is a standard. Or .db. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the name of a file.
it generates the code
It
to
generates the code, but the main thing that's important is that variable engine. So it's going to detect that that's a SQL alchemy type of variable. And now if you run that cell,
we
it
gotta
detects that we
install
need SQL
this.
alchemy. Yeah.
No worries.
Yep. Okay. And then you can close that pane. But you do see there's a database that's now been added. And you can also see that there's no tables in it. But what you can do is like if you had a large database with lots of tables, you can still do the plus icon and get like tables moved in very quickly. You can also talk SQL to these tables if you wanted to. But the real cherry on top here, if you go to the left sidebar one more time, you're going to see that there's this little robot icon. So it's kind of in the middle. Yeah, chat with AI. So you need to edit AI settings here, which we're not going to do. But once you've configured your keys and all of that, what you can do is you can write at and then name of data frame or name of data source, and then we will add the schema information to the prompt for you. So you can do things like, oh, I want to have this table. I want you to generate the SQL for this table that does this, and then ChatGPT or whatever LLM you've got is going to be made aware of like, okay, and that table has these columns with these types. Here's examples of it that are going to help it write the right query for you.
Wow.
It can also generate the Altair and Polars stuff for you, by the way. But this is why I want to emphasize we are working on extra features for like good prompt engineering within this notebook as well. Schemas really matter also for like LLMs basically. So that's also why you want to be aware of the data frames that you've got. And it's also why Marimo has like a special case citizen situation for them.
Wow, I must say, Vincent, I'm very impressed and also a little bit overwhelmed already. Now, before we dive into the Quarto plugin that
Yeah, we should move to that.
you've been creating, before we go into that, what are some good ways for people to find out more about Marimo? If they want to get started with this, revisit the different features that we've just discussed, where
So,
would you
I
point
mean,
them?
I think this video is already a pretty good starting point, if I'm honest. Like we are going over all the
Yeah, but
all
maybe
the
some. Is
elements.
there some documentation?
Yeah. So if you go to marimo.io, you're going to see the big website. Few things to like. This is a little bit of marketing material, right? But there's a docs page that you can go to on top. We also have a blog. We also have a Discord link up there if you're interested. But this doc really contains a whole lot. There's tons of examples. There's tons of guides. There's even a guide for like, hey, I'm used to Jupyter. How do I like acquaint myself with Marimo as quickly as possible without hitting my head too much? Because a few things are definitely different. So like the docs are big, is what I can say on that one.
Yeah.
Besides that, some people like to watch videos instead of looking at docs all day. So we've also got like a pretty big YouTube channel at this point. We tend to release between 8 and 10 videos a week. Most of them are YouTube shorts, like just to be clear on that.
We can link to a couple of ones that are relevant.
Yeah, so the thing that we do, like we use the YouTube shorts to have like a daily, it's a thing that's working out surprisingly well for us. So we have so many features that like making a video that has all of them is going to end up being super long. So what we have with the shorts, if you follow us on YouTube, you're basically going to get this one video a day of like a feature in Marimo. And half of those features will be new. The other half will just be stuff that people keep on asking us questions about. So that can also be a nice way to get like a little trickle of, oh, here's a feature, without it being like overly overwhelming, basically.
Nice. We'll add a link in the description to those videos.
The other two. Okay.
All right.
So we're gonna move to the Quarto thing. There's one thing I want to mention before getting there that's important to understand, perhaps. Could you go to a GitHub repository? That GitHub repository is going to help explain what we're doing on the Quarto side of things, because we're doing something that's a bit unconventional.
Any?
Or no? So one that I've got in my mind. So could you go to GitHub/Koning, which is my Koning with KOANING. That's my username. And then / and I think Mo Talk would be a good one.
Mo Talk?
MO Talk. Yeah.
Right. First try.
We're going to do something. So this contains a widget that you can use in Marimo. But the thing that's interesting here is not so much the code. It's actually the GitHub pages. Could you go there?
Right.
Because let's for a moment, observe that we are running Marimo here, and there's a demo of a widget, by the way, which you can actually, just for fun, could you use it? Could you hit the start listening button and then start talking?
Hey, we're recording a video about Quarto and Marimo.
Oh, you have to hit start listening one more
Oh
time.
yeah, of course. I just.
Yeah.
Hey there, how's it going? We're just recording a video here. Hey.
I think yeah. So I think it's not. Yeah. So I think it's not working because we're talking over Zoom. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. We'll try it out after the video.
Yeah, and also you're using Vivaldi instead of Chrome. I think that might also not be like because I'm using
it's a
a
Chromium-based
API.
browser, but the fact that we're recording might be interfering here.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely the Zoom thing. Anyway,
so
the thing that's important here is
Oh,
the transcript would appear there, and this widget would also expose what you're saying as a string in Python, like that. Just like what we saw with the draw data, you can talk string. It's basically what's happening here.
Wow. Okay,
and that can be useful if you're doing
streaming in the streaming fashion, or once I stop once I press stop listening.
I need to add settings for that, but the way it works is you trigger it, it starts listening. But the web API does notice, like, okay, the guy stopped talking at this point, so I'm going to stop writing. And then if you start talking again, it's going to assume it's a new conversation. But it's mainly meant for you to be able to dictate. But all of that stuff is possible. But one thing I want to mention, notice how we are on GitHub Pages.
Yes.
So no Python backend.
There's no server running.
There's no, well, everything is happening in the front end. That's kind of the interesting thing. So we have this thing called Pyodide that allows you to run Python in the front end, basically. And you know, it's a heavy thing to run in the front end. You wouldn't put this up on every website, but the fact that we can host Marimo notebooks statically without having you to demand that you install anything, also means that for a lot of plugins that I write, I can just host that on GitHub Pages. And it's this mechanism of running Marimo with Python inside of Pyodide that we also use for the Quarto plugin. Right. So the whole idea here is that we do have this way for us to run Python in the front end. And Marimo allows you to still have the reactive nature of it appear, but that's like there are constraints there because not every Python package, let's say you've got one that uses Rust, but it doesn't compile to Pyodide, that won't work. You're also not going to run PyTorch or anything like that because there's actually a 2 GB upper limit of how big the memory allocation could be for Pyodide apps. So there's definitely constraints. But if you want to do interactive stuff on your blog, let's say, and you're not interested in doing any JavaScript whatsoever, this is a path towards that. So we wrote a couple of plugins to make this easy to add this to your docs, but Quarto is also using the same mechanism. So that's what the plugin does under the hood. We're basically leveraging the WASM engine to make sure that you can also run Python cells on your blog effectively.
Right. There are lots of moving parts here to make this all work buttery smooth. And
yes,
yeah,
and I can imagine it's a bit overwhelming, but I do want to. But this nature of hey, you're able to run this on a static page, that is important to appreciate. Because if you ever were to hit like an install bug on Quarto and you weren't aware of the fact that it's Pyodide, some packages won't work actually, like that is gonna get you into a gnarly world of hurt if you're not aware.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, so you're saying that this is the technology that makes the Quarto plugin possible?
Yes.
How about we now?
Yeah. Let's
actually dive into the Quarto plugin. I'm very excited. I'm already overwhelmed with all the features that Marimo offers, but I guess we can do one more, and that is this Quarto plugin, right?
Yes.
So tell me, what do I need to do to?
Let's go to your terminal. And I'm going to leverage your Quarto knowledge on this one. So we can close down the notebook, and we don't necessarily need it anymore.
All right, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop the Marimo server.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And let's make a new folder just to keep it clean as well, so we're not doing anything with this. And let's just call it demo. I think that will be fine. Yep. And let's start a new Quarto project. I think you might know this better than I do. The command for that is something like Quarto new.
Quarto create.
Create. That's the one.
Right here.
Very good. Yes. So let's run that one. Let's start a new blog. That's always a good place to start. Some directory, some title. That is always good. Name we can open up we can open it up. We don't have to. There we go. And what we're going to do now is we are going to just look at this and say, like, okay, this is a normal Quarto project. In this case, we're going to make a change to one of the posts.
Yeah.
So if you go to the posts folder, right, there's like, we can pick either one. But yeah, let's say that's the one that we are going to want to make a change to.
How about
So
we preview this before
yeah,
we actually
exactly.
make a
I was thinking
change?
along the same lines as well. We have a terminal in, yeah, let's use this one.
Well,
It's
we can
bigger.
also, yeah, and I guess there's also, I see this preview button over here.
Yeah, that's running Quarto preview under the hood. Yeah, okay, that's actually kind of nice. So this is actually kind of a nice way to work.
Yeah.
So that's great. We have a post with code thing that renders there automatically. We're going to make some changes here, but we want to add Marimo stuff to it, which means that we do have to install the plugin to get started with.
All right.
And that we do have to do from the terminal, I think.
Yeah, so this terminal is, there's of course the terminal inside Positron, and I could add additional terminals over here, but I'm gonna switch back to my own terminal here. Yeah.
And then I think, was it Quarto install? Like this, again, this is where your memory might be better than mine. I can.
No, the computer's memory. Let's leverage that one. Quarto
that also works.
install.
Oh, yeah.
Extension Marimo-team, Quarto dash
yes.
/ Quarto dash Marimo.
Yes, so this is pointing to a GitHub repository. Marimo-team is the name of our organization, and Quarto-Marimo is the name of the repository that contains the plugin. And yeah, we trust the authors.
Yeah, you're sure?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Right. Yeah, I do. It's a shout out to Dylan, by the way. He's the main author of this work. He definitely did most of the work on this one. Yeah, this all looks good. We don't have to watch the documentation, but okay, like we installed the plugin now. The next thing we got to do is make that one page we want to edit aware of a new filter, I think is what it's called in Quarto land. So in the filters, and then Marimo-team /
it was Quarto-Marimo.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as what we just installed.
I would assume it. So our docs, I'm looking at the docs page right now, and it shows something different. But let's try this. See if if it doesn't work, we know how to change it. But let's now add a slider here. Basically, just like we had before because we're interested in showing off the interactive bit. So let's add a slider. So a new Python cell will be appropriate here. So I think 3 backticks and then Python curly bracket dot Marimo. That ought to do it. Oh yeah, and I think so. It has to be not Quarto-Marimo, but Marimo, because that curly bracket Marimo stuff, that is a filter that we're using. And the name of the filter is Marimo. Therefore, the filter we got to declare in the footnotes needs to be also just Marimo. I think that's the reason.
All right.
So from
render on save.
Yep,
yeah, this executed without any errors. So we can also see, I just saw that it installed some packages for this. So this looks like it's working. Of course, we don't yet see anything on the right, but we're going to change that.
That's not a surprise. So let's import Marimo as MO, just like before. Yep, and then let's do the slider thing. So mo.ui.slider 1,10,1. Yep, let's assign that to a variable as well. Let's show the variable at the end. And then if you now save this, it should show. Cool. Okay, and then that looks good. And now we can add some text there. So something like "Look, ma, a slider," or something witty. Yep, very good. And then we can have a new Python cell down below over there that also uses the Marimo filter that then shows the value of X.
You have to add
the filter
Marimo again, right? Because otherwise Marimo doesn't pick up on this cell, or
I would assume so, yeah. Because again, like Marimo needs to be aware of all the cells that we have in order to know in what order they have to run, right?
Mm-hmm. Ah, yes.
Oh, but you're multiplying a slider here.
I need to use the value.
Yeah.
That's a good one to remember.
Yeah. And now if you scroll around, yep, there you go. So
Nice.
Pyodite stuff is happening in the front end here. Like what we could do to make this, and I think that's like a good final demo to make people aware. Like what we could theoretically do now is show you the ScatterWidget. That's a thing that we could also import here if we want to do something fancy. So
Well, let's
from
make the
draw data.
theoretical practical. And
Yes. So let's.
Before we do this, I actually have a question because when you're using, this is a Quarto Markdown file, right? QMD. Normally, this is how you would declare a Python cell, right? This is something that Positron picks up on, right? It becomes interactive. Now, I'm just curious what the syntax will be in this case with that, in order to also turn this into a Marimo cell.
I mean, I don't, I would have to know more about, I mean, we can try it. It doesn't necessarily hurt to try, but like, so the thing with, so Positron at this point, right? And this is where you have to be kind of careful. So Positron at some point is saying, oh, Python cell, got to run Python. Yes. Oh, and if I want to run a Python, I'm not using WebAssembly Python. No, I'm going to use local Python, something, you know. So exactly. There's a split brain right there.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so what we're doing right here is we're using regular Markdown code cells.
Yes.
So they're not interactive or being run by Quarto, but they will be by Marimo if you have.
But this is a really good comment because that can cause a lot of confusion. Because especially if you're used to like the normal way of writing Python in Quarto, that is actually substantially different. Again, because of the whole WASM thing.
Yeah. The beauty of Quarto then, right, is because this can still be exported to a variety of formats, right? Be it HTML page or a PDF. Well, PDF doesn't really make sense because there's no interactivity.
So that's the main thing. Like the Marimo stuff that we're offering is, if you want to use the reactive items, we also got some static things, right? If that's the thing you're interested in, you could do static stuff. But the real benefit and power comes from the ability to wire together widgets and having the whole reactive experience, which doesn't really translate well into PDFs or Word documents or stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to forget about these kind of cells and we're going to stick to the regular Markdown kind of cells.
Yes.
ScatterWidget, right?
Yeah, so from draw data, import ScatterWidget. Oh, and you got to wrap it with mo.ui.anywidget. Yeah.
Like this, and also...
Yeah, and then show the variable. Yeah. Let's run this now, just to confirm what this looks like. Because I think you're going to see something. Right, so it doesn't detect the module. Oh, that's a bummer. But then if we wait, it loads. So what's happening here is it's actually installing it live. And there will be a bit of delay. Like it has to actually be installed in right now, we don't have a nice way to offer a Pyodite environment that comes with a predefined virtual environment just the way that we like. So this is installing it live. So you will have that little bit of lag if you're going to depend on other packages. That is good to be aware of.
Yeah.
We might find a nice way to fix that, by the way. Like it is sort of in the back of our minds. It's just that right now, this is the easiest way to get this to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be cool if you could create a virtual environment or a virtual machine, because that's basically what this is, right? Can we treat this conceptually like a Docker container?
Not really. Docker container would have access to a file system and a network, and like it's able to make, so you are able to write Python code that's able to make requests, but you can't launch a server, for example, because you cannot open up a port. So the Docker analogy holds, except for the fact that it's actually not a Docker container.
It's not a perfect analogy, but right, it's as if you're starting with a clean Docker image that just has the operating system, but no other packages installed, and that's something that you would have to do every time.
Well, it's actually a bit more subtle. So it's actually not an operating system; it's the front end. So it's an operating system of sorts, but it's WASM, right? So there are a couple of APIs at your disposal, but do we want to give access to your file system from a browser?
No. That's not what I'm saying. It's mostly like I mean, I was kind of hoping that's what you were hinting at, is that you can pre-bake
Yeah, so we cannot
all your
pre-bake the Python
packages.
environment. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's. I would not be surprised if people are working on that, but my impression right now, at least, is that that is something that is not on the table. And um, it does get complex as well if you consider that some packages have Python code that needs to be built at runtime, and other packages have stuff that's precompiled, but only for certain versions. Like you do get into a messy territory quite quickly. And the short story is we don't have UV for WASM just yet.
Right. Yeah.
But what we could do, what is it complaining about? Another directory.
But health, there's probably some API endpoint it's expecting or something. That.
Where is this error coming from? Is it coming from positron, or is it coming from?
No,
Because it's checking a health endpoint, right? So it's.
I've never seen this before. I'm gonna blame Marimo. I don't know.
No, so it could. Oh, right, yeah. So Marimo does usually ping for a health endpoint. We'll also make a note of that because it's probably because it does feel like a request that we are making. Okay, could be. One thing that is, I think, good to show maybe at the end over here is if we can make like one final cell that shows the Marimo data frame. That might be fun. So what we could do is we could do something like have a new cell SW data as pandas in this case.
As pandas?
Well, so data that has to be an underscore. So I think polars would also work. There is a thing though that okay, this is a bit of a technical thing. I talked to Richie about it. So polars depends on a couple of libraries. I believe Tokyo is one of them, and that one of those upstream libraries doesn't compile to WASM at the moment. So it's an upstream thing. There is some light support for polars inside of WASM Pyodide for Marimo at the moment, but it's behind like 10 versions at this point. So you're going to be forced to use an old version of polars that still has the old compilation that works, and you're not able to sort of use the latest and greatest stuff.
Right.
Pandas will just use all the NumPy things and should also work.
Yeah.
Again, like WASM is a different beast, and installing pandas takes a bit more time. But oh, and you've not drawn data yet, so let's do that as well.
Yeah, but it's complaining about pandas. It took a bit longer because
to install, yeah, because pandas is a bigger pandas because you have to install NumPy, which is megabytes, so that takes a bit longer.
Yeah, I just want to.
That should work. I wouldn't be surprised if it works, but the one thing that's going to be I'm careful with advertising for it. Like I love Polars, I want more people to use it. But the unfortunate thing is that if you are on the Polars docs and you see a new method and then you go, "Ooh, I want to use that in WASM Marimo," and then the method doesn't work because WASM demands that you use an old version of Polar, it becomes kind of a hard story to pitch. So for now, I still recommend people to use pandas if they are interested in doing this sort of thing in the WASM side.
All right.
But you still got the magnifying glass, right? It does work. You can do, and you can also do chart stuff from here, right? You can build Altair charts. You can add sliders to the mix. So like you're pretty flexible and stuff that you can do. Which includes like the any widgets. This is one any widget, but I've made an. We'll do marketing around that next week. But I've made a widget now that also allows you to annotate data with a gamepad. That is also something that just totally works inside of Marimo, and that will also work on your blog now. Like you can get gamepad things to work on your blog quite easily with these things.
That's fantastic. So just to make this crystal clear, is that we're looking at a static HTML file.
Yes.
Right. So
yes,
I can open this in the browser. Again, takes a moment for things to come back to be imported, but it's static. I can have this on my Quarto blog.
Yep, you can send it. It'll just work. They won't have to install anything. And also, again, like there's a download button on that data frame thing. So like if you could theoretically put your own authentication in front of this, just see this as an artifact that you deploy somewhere in S3 and put authentication in front of it. And then like I've got these GitHub packages that are basically like a cron job, and they just generate a new WASM thing like this every day. Like for my solar panels on my house, I download new weather information, and every day there's like a new Marimo WASM generated thing that just allows me to look at the predictions and it tells me when to turn on the dishwasher. Like that's a little demo I've got, for example. And you can do that with this too.
Nice. Very nice. Now, okay, so I guess the order of cells, does that matter?
Shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't matter?
I mean, let's try it. I think it shouldn't matter, but let's try it because
So
like the import Marimo thing, let's move that to the bottom. Yeah, so that yeah, the slider is also going to move to the bottom now. Yeah, and save it. Like the slider will move, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the slider is there, and the rest is now up, also showing up. And that scatter widget needs Marimo, the library, to be around. That is around, so there you go. The order doesn't matter. Same thing. It's like the same story.
Excellent. Yeah. And if we go back to my browser and I would reload this one.
Same story. Yeah, same story.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, this is great stuff.
Yeah. And like the one thing we haven't shown, but it is something that because you can also combine this with Quarto in some way. So right now, for example, we're not showing the code, right? You could also do this echo is true thing inside of the cells if you wanted to also like if you wanted to show the person who's reading this, like, oh, this is the code you need to run. Like you can it also lends itself nicely for like, okay, this is part of the tutorial, this isn't. So like that sort of a thing is also like quite easy to declare.
Right, like this.
I think it has. Is it? Does it have to be capital true? Or could this also work? Okay. Like I remember from like the R days, it always had to be capitals. So, those were R, but those were R markdown documents, not Q markdown documents.
Yeah, in the distant past.
I mean, it's not that distant. I still use RStudio now and again. It's a cool tool. ggplot
it definitely
is the best.
It definitely is, but Quarto, definitely superseded R Markdown.
Yeah, I know. Like positron's the way forward. I'm aware.
No, well, positron as well, but I meant Quarto.
Oh, and that's hard.
R Markdown.
Yeah. Right. No, that's true. The QMD is definitely more general in it. And if I'm not mistaken, like I think the fast AI people, they're like all over this as well, right? Like they use Quarto all over the place on their blogs, and like I think Fast AI, the course nowadays as well, is fully in Quarto, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. All the Python packages that Posit creates are Quarto websites. Yeah.
Our packages as well, I think, right?
No, that's for most, I would say that they use package down.
They have their own thing. Okay.
Which has been around for a bit longer. Similar ideas.
Also
use Bootstrap.
So the funny thing was, like, do you remember Distill? The Distill blog that RStudio used to have?
I don't actually.
So my blog was actually a Distill blog for like a really long time.
Oh, really?
But then they started moving sort of a bit away from Distill, a little bit more towards Quarto, and at some point I decided to write my own thing. But I actually used the Quarto predecessor for like 2 years. It was good stuff.
You mean R Markdown?
Yeah, so my blog was fully R Markdown. Like also the Python stuff was just all R Markdown documents.
Yeah, my book Data Science Command Line entirely, which is available online, entirely
lends itself very well for books too. Yep,
yeah,
true.
Yeah. But nowadays there's Quarto, and there is the Marimo plugin, and I think that you've given us a really good overview of not just the plugin but also Marimo itself.
If I could plug like one final thing, and also like
one more
partially
thing,
because I'll have to wrap up. I know.
No,
but no. So like the one thing that is also going to be really cool for blogs, and I do think it's also kind of like, if I think about the future of data science, I do think it's going to be a bit more in this direction. Could you go to Google and like type there's a GitHub repository on my end. It's called Wiggly Stuff. So github.com/koning/wiggly stuff.
All right, let me see if I can get this. Koning
Wiggly stuff. Yeah. So this Like I have many packages that offer a widget, and I also have this one package that's like a collection of widgets, basically. And if you go to the GitHub pages on this thing, you're actually going to see a pretty good impression of just the kinds of widgets that exist. And a lot of these widgets are super relevant for I'm working in a notebook, I need to do something clever, but they're also super relevant for blogs. And the first thing you're looking at right now, like that's a 2D slider. So you can move that peg around and you can see the chart update depending on where that peg is. You're simulating different data.
All right. Yes, and
And
the gray one, is that the previous one or is that a separate
that's the
cluster?
original one. That's the original one. And
Ooh.
it's mainly there to show that like, oh, it started at the center and now it's no longer at the center.
It uses Altair. Yeah.
It uses Altera under the hood. Again, you can see the reactive thing. So thing updates, other thing responds. Below, there's a different weird little widget. This one's the matrix thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you can have a matrix where you can click and drag, and then also have charts that sort of move around.
That's
Um,
nice.
Another fun thing, we've got Tangle objects below as well. That's also like a fancy little demo.
Tangle
So
objects.
yeah, so that's a Brett Victor thing. So you can have sliders, but why not hide them in plain sight in your markdown? So everything that's blue there, you can click and drag. And then once you let go, the text will update. And you can also mix and match that with charts. So if you scroll down, you can also see like, oh, by the way, there's this thing called Amdahl's law. And if you change one of the percentages, the line will update as well.
That's crazy.
Stuff like this will also work on your blog, and you can also make presentations differently. And this whole idea of, oh, we've got widgets at our disposal and we have that as a first class citizen in a notebook. I'm not trying to suggest that what we should think about is, oh, we're upgrading our notebook. The thing that I would really like to upgrade is your imagination. So there was an old way of thinking about notebooks where code would run and we'd have charts interactively, and that's like super great. But we're going to go to a world pretty soon where the widgets that are being generated can be generated on the fly thanks to LLMs, and can also on the fly interact with your Python code and back again. And something about that is going to be the future, but you need to be mentally aware that you have to get a little bit more creative in order to benefit most from it. And
Mm.
yes, like for sure, all of these things are like super cool to have on blogs, and Quarto is a great plugin, and like let's definitely celebrate that. Um, but the real feeling that you should have when you expose yourself to this is like, oh, I can rethink the way I work a little bit, just because of this reactivity. And that I think is more something that people should try to focus on. It's not just ooh shiny widget. It's oh new shiny widget allows me to work differently. That's I
Yes.
think the most important aspect of all of this.
I think work differently and learn differently because
Yes.
I mean when so I mean there have been situations where I looked at an equation and I'm like, what is going on? But if I were to turn that equation into code and make it interactive and then visualize the output, um, that to me, and I've seen others do this as well, is that then you can get us, a grasp of how things work together within that equation, right? You can.
There's something about the ability to play that makes it much easier to grok. Like if you make it more fun and more easy to sort of play around with an idea, it becomes much easier to acquaint yourself with it. That is
Yeah,
definitely a theory that I've got when it comes to learning.
yeah,
And these things totally help. Like the matrix widget that you see, like I'm actually making a sort of a small video course in linear algebra, and I think having these widgets where you're actually able to sort of click and drag around the matrix is going
that's
to be freaking helpful.
definitely. I can remember the times that I was trying to come up with a covariance matrix myself and then
Oh
visualize
yeah,
it in MATLAB and then
yeah,
figure
yeah,
out
yeah.
that it didn't work. And this was, I mean, this was a long time ago, but this is definitely, I mean, when you want to understand, okay, what does a covariance matrix do? This having something like this, being interactive definitely helps there. And especially when you're writing a blog that's more educational, um, having these interactive things are yeah, very nice, very
Yeah.
helpful indeed.
So So these widgets, that's kind of the thing that the joke I like to make at the office. I have a colleague who started the AnyWidget project, and the joke I like to make is he built AnyWidget so that Vincent can make the widgets. Like I think I've got almost more widgets than he does now. But I'm really big on these widgets. So if people have a good idea for a widget that needs to be out there but isn't yet, ping me on socials. I will gladly consider making them. Because I do think a lot of the future for data science is with this stuff.
Yeah. And then combined with using a gamepad, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I might see like you would definitely be like looking for the limits of response times in the Marimo notebook, but like, can we play Doom in Marimo? Like, that is a question that you can maybe start asking
I
yourself. I
was
will eventually. I will sort of figure that out, but not yet.
I was just thinking like data science is just gonna converge to game design. It's we're all we all
Is it-
secretively want to design games. That's what we actually want, and we
the
just
you
package it up as you know.
you wrote a book this one time, data science from the command line. Like, I want to do data science from the PlayStation, just to see how that might go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would be up for that.
But yeah,
Vincent.
this is Marimo. Thanks for having me. We are definitely also interested in adding like a little bit of extra support for the Quarto plugin. So if there's any feedback, definitely let us know. The
Yes.
feedback so far has been great, and yeah, it's definitely exciting for us to also see like more people blog using these Marimo widgets. So we're really looking forward to what people do with it.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Like I said, it's a lot to take in, but
Sorry.
we're gonna make sure that everything that we've mentioned, and there is a resource available to learn more about this, and of course, how to get started in the first place, because that is the best way to learn about this is to open up Marimo yourself. We'll make sure that all the links are in the description. Vincent, thank you so much for showing us Marimo and the Quarto plugin. It's been a pleasure.
Graag gedaan.
Yeah, fantastic. All the way from the Netherlands, Vincent Warmerdam
Yes,
from
all the way from
Marimo.
Haarlem.
It's like an
Very
hour
good.
train ride away from me, but thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye bye.